What's going on, friends? Sam Prentice back once again, and recently I've started a journey into riding motorbikes. Yes, after 43 years I decided that the growl of the exhaust and hurtling speeds with just an engine between my legs was the route forward, and in just a couple of months' time I'll be creating a blend of content where I take a 1,000-mile trip from the top of Scotland all the way down to the south part of Cornwall. So if you're watching this thinking, yeah, that sounds like fun, well, make sure you hit that like button and the subscribe button for more content. Now, on this journey of rediscovery, I have had lots of first impressions of equipment to wear on the bike, but also a fair amount of tech. Now, if you have been onto this channel before, you might have guessed that I think tech is a huge benefit not only for safety, but in this case also direction. And I want to make this journey as painless as possible, so I picked up a Chigee AIO 5 Lite. In fact, I picked two of them up, because in fact I purchased two bikes in quite a short space of time, and I wanted them kitted up with not only Apple CarPlay but also dash cameras. But in my typical usual style, well, I didn't stop there, and I also picked up a number of accessories such as tyre pressure monitors, OBD wireless modules, and a Chigee wireless remote, along with a fork stem mount. I hope that this will provide me with the practical elements that I require for this epic journey.
You are watching a master at work.
So let's start at the beginning and we'll get to the unboxing. This unit here is the GPS. That's the GPS. That just plugs in. We've got this rather fetching keyring, and then this is your power strip along with fuse. So the fuse is literally just here. So if for any reason it doesn't power up, that might be your culprit, but it should be fine. Let's take this out. So you have your positive and negative, and then you also then need to find another positive that runs in regarding to your ignition. So when the ignition comes on, you just want to have this plugged into something like a fuse, so when everything ignites and goes off, that's basically another positive that will kick that off. All the connectors, of course, will be found on the main head unit, which is across here, and you should be able to work out what's what. Again, everything is labeled as it should be, which is pretty cool. On B, this is your kit for your cameras. Again, there's a few stickers and a couple of clips. We've got your stickers for your cameras as well. Again, that will just attach to that, stick underneath or on top of something. This here is another couple of connectors. Again, if you're going to splice into other cables, well, you can do it that way. This is basically for the connector to your handlebars. So if you're going to mount this somewhere, these little parts here sit inside, obviously, to make the handlebars smaller. And then on this particular system, you're going to just click that ball into there by undoing these two parts here, and that will then sit hopefully centrally to whatever you're going to be mounting this to. The one I've done on the triple, you'll see in the other video that there is a center stalk that I've used for that because there was just a glaringly obvious hole to put that in. We've got some tools here as well. Again, you're going to need to keep hold of these, especially this little screwdriver, because that one is the one that allows you to open up the bottom of this in order to access your SD card. The biggest SD card that you can apparently install in this is a 256 gig card. You should be able to see SD card, mini SD card, and there's a USB-C connector here as well. This, I don't know what this is used for, but it's covered up, so I'm guessing not a huge amount. I doubt very much you'd be able to pull power out of it, but I guess it could be something that you could adapt. We could maybe print a cover for this or something and see what happens, but I doubt very much that's going to give you too much power draw, and I'd probably end up just leaving it alone. So front and rear cameras, thing to remember about this, whichever way you put this in, you can always loosen this off and this thing will turn completely. So once this is loose, Make sure you tighten this back up again after it's been installed. But that is about it from that front. Again, if you're going to splice into something, just be really careful with how you use these cables. And again, there's a few little plastic clips and stuff that you can utilize with that. So I've got to kind of work out where I'm going to mount this and how easy it's going to be able to be mounted to that. Let's just take these out. Again, this comes as a pivot, so if you loosen this off, it will then allow you to work out exactly where you're going to mount these on the handlebars. And again, just tighten it back up. You might want to add this Allen key, screwdriver and other bits and pieces into your toolbox for the bike. It may come in useful, but ultimately I'm going to take this off. I don't quite know where I'm going to install this yet. I kind of had the idea about putting it over the top of the Pro Tapper, but that's quite thick, so I'm not entirely sure what we're going to do with that just yet. This is a little part just to protect any of the metals, but this is plastic anyway, so you shouldn't have too many issues. But the idea is to mount that inside of that, and you can obviously then make that smaller or slightly larger. There isn't a huge amount of options there, but that's going to be our smallest part, and all we do there is just put that over the top of something and then screw it all together nice and tightly so it doesn't move. So let's work it out, see where we're going to install it, and come right back. So firstly, I would suggest that overall you do take your time with wiring things up and correctly routing your cables. I was pretty lucky with the first install, as moving things into position was simple. However, placement of the rear camera on the first bike was a little bit more contentious, and really there isn't anywhere that I can easily mount it. And well, here comes the 3D printing element, because with a scanner, some CAD and a 3D printer, you can in fact get exactly what you need away from an over-the-counter alternative. And well, we'll come back to that a little bit later on in the video, and we'll show you exactly how we did that. This channel is sponsored by Polymaker and PCBWay, the best choice in filament and PCB manufacturing. Explore PCBWay's 3D printing portal. Easily upload your STL file and choose from a spectrum of exotic filaments for that special project. From PCBs to 3D prints, trust PCBWay.com for your unmatched quality and innovation. Visit them today at PCBWay.com. So literally 2 months ago, I basically purchased two motorbikes. The first is a Triumph Street Triple R, and this is the one that I actually had the mounting point issue on the rear for the camera. And it is important, as one of the features on the AO5 is a blind spot detector. And certainly on the bike that we're taking the trip on, larger vehicles trying to overtake me, well, could be a real issue, especially as we go further down south. So when looking for map and camera onboard solutions, really two units did pop out at me. It's the Chigee AO5 and also the Innoviv. Now, I reached out to both and watched a ton of reviews on YouTube, and personally I felt that the Chigee was a better solution despite them being pretty similar. Now, Chigee also has a new unit coming out. It's the AIO 6 Max. This will be available on their website, but also available on Kickstarter. This is a new unit, of course, and it boasts various improvements, such as 60 frames per second at 180, an inch bigger screen, because of course size matters apparently, a 4G version, and a couple of extra modules, which might have made this ever so slightly cheaper, as you can take the display off and move it from bike to bike. But of course, you would still need two sets of cameras per bike, and plus it's a Kickstarter, so meh. Anyway, back to what I got, and I got the 5 Lite, and I have been riding around for a solid month with this system on both bikes, and I have to say, well, it does deliver on exactly what I wanted. The maps are a key point for me, and one piece of advice that I actually got from my test instructor was to keep my phone inside my jacket pocket and probably not on the bike. And although there are some very capable phone mounts and locks out there, I felt that really a dedicated system and display would be better for me overall. I can use the control to switch things out by hand or control via Apple Siri via my Cardo headset. And because I picked up the X4, which came with 2 headsets, I can fit them into both of my different helmets. And this is very much about seamless integration between you, the bike, and various management systems. And in this case, I have the tyre pressure monitor, the OBD port, which monitors real-time engine data. So the big question, of course, is did I need all those added extras? And no, I didn't. I didn't actually need any of those things, and I didn't want to have any buyer's remorse. Now, it was on Chigee's website, and I purchased through their website. The shipping took a little bit longer than I was hoping for, and I had to send them an email and say, where's my order? I've been waiting for this for like a week. what's going on. And I figured that it would be 2 or 3 days. Nothing arrived. And, you know, I started to get a bit desperate. But Chigee came back. There had been a mistake that had been made with the order. I don't know what that was, but they had shipped it out and everything was good in the end. But I certainly didn't need those added extras, and you might choose not to buy those things either. But I put them on in this particular video because, well, why not? And really, I have to be honest though, really the key areas here are answering and making phone calls while I'm on the bike. And of course, you can just do that with the Cardo system. The maps, which again, you could just have on your phone. And well, the cameras, which again, with a couple of DJI or GoPro cameras, well, that just might do the trick. But on this system, and although it's 1920 by 1080p at 30 frames per second, which isn't quite YouTube quality, well, it's good enough to display near misses, fellow drivers also not paying attention, or evidence should the worst happen. And well, let's just try and keep positive, shall we? Moving swiftly on, and installed into the display unit, which also doubles as the brains, I've also installed a 250GB card, which I understand is the maximum for this system. Other notable things are the 5-inch display, 1000 nit for brightness, and also a touchscreen. Now, I'm not one for taking my hands off the controls to mess with the screen here, so I've also installed your control that lets you switch in and out of the display modules using 2.4GB, which then talks to the screen. RC remote control. Let's pair with this then, see if we can find it. Okay, press the pairing button. Here we go. Look at that, already found it. So that's it, done. Okay, let's go into here, see if it does anything. I'll ring my voicemail. See if we can hang up. Yep, we can. Okay, cool. Alright, that's obviously working. If I wanted to make a call, what does it allow me to do? Okay, it's giving me extra options here, so if I want to go down, oh cool, okay, so there's a bunch of options there. What about regarding playing stuff? What about next? Let's play and pause, next. Okay, I'm quite happy with that. So I can control that as well, and then pause if I wish to, like that. Excellent. Okay, I don't think that's too outrageous. Again, there are various fittings, screen covers, mounts, replaceable accessories available on the Chigee website, and I would suggest you do have a quick look to see what that might cost you in the event of a drop or if something went wrong. Now, there is also a Facebook group with 24,000 people posting on a regular basis, and as I said before, there is a new unit out, and maybe that one might be the one to go for, especially if it's on a discount. But if you are looking to order something, I do have an affiliate link in the links below, and that aids the support of the channel. But I did buy these 2 units to go on my bike, so I do have an invested interest, but of course, if the unit was terrible, well, I'd just say that, wouldn't I? So the second system that we've used to install here is on a Honda Monkey bike, which is actually the bike we're going to be using to do the Lanza to John O'Groats trip, which is going to be absolutely amazing. But as I've already mentioned, the installs are pretty easy, but mounting the cameras and the wiring configs do need to be well thought out. Routing them across the bike certainly is not difficult, but if you don't want cables falling out while you're riding, well, who wants that? Nobody wants that, of course. I did attach a couple of cable ties to the camera cables, so if they end up coming off for whatever reason, well, they shouldn't fall far from the mounting points. Both units also needed to be upgraded on their firmware, so when I plugged them in, again, I just simply connected them via Wi-Fi to my local network and, well, hit install. We had to do that twice, in fact, and that's because the AIO 6 has just launched, and that was basically a second update, but I didn't actually see any major changes between the last version and, well, this new version, and maybe that's because it's the older version. Who knows? So to sum things up, really, the Chigee AIO 5 Lite units have worked across both bikes seamlessly with no real issues. But of course, it is the maps that are really critical for my up and coming trip. So really, it's the Apple CarPlay element for me that's really key, and the rest of the stuff that's on this is really just incidental. However, I have been using it to control my music and taking more of an interest in the video monitoring and my riding. Overall though, of course, no issues. The install of the additional parts such as the tyre pressure will only display on the main menu, which isn't the same as the mirroring in CarPlay mode. This is also the same as the data from the ODB module. So after a little bit of messing around, we finally got the bar settings done here. It looks like there might be some overinflation on the back here, according to this, but that's how it came. That's how the bike came. So I'm not entirely sure kind of what to think about that, but that's kind of where we're at the minute. But I believe now that might now give me an error. So I've got to go and check that and make sure that that's not the case. 2.86 bar here at 25 degrees. So that's that set up. Basically all you needed to do is just screw them on. There wasn't really a kind of big deal with that, it's just the way it needed to be. So fingers crossed that'll be alright, and I'll just tighten these up. So these are now installed, happy with those, but if you do want to change the batteries, or if you do need to change the batteries in the future, if you just turn this anti-clockwise, you'll see that the batteries are here, and you can basically just pop them out and the cap screws back on. Just make sure you don't lose the cap and everything is on tight. Okay, so next we've got the OBD meter, which should be pretty self-explanatory, and it'll just give us a little bit better information coming out from the bike, and I hope this is the right cable, which is this one, and inside of here there's just that, and all we need to do is basically plug it in and hope that it just pairs straight away. So let's get into it. But let's plug it in and just make sure that it works to start with. Okay, that's on and in. Some cable management in here at some point soon, I think. Pop that there for the minute and see what happens. Let's go into the screen and have a look. Come into here and go to settings, and then again, same as before, we're going to go features, and then we'll look at that OBD. We're going to pair that now. Hopefully that'll start pairing. There you go, connected. That was easy. Easier than the last lot. So that should give us some more information now. I don't know what information. Come back out here. So going to give us some stuff here, some stats. There you go. So that will probably give us some more information once we start the bike. So let's give that a go. Oh, that sounded great, didn't it? Okay, let's try again. I'm just wondering now why the voltage is going down. It's probably because I've been sat here with it. The bike is now flat. Bollocks. Certainly with the bikes outside, of course, I did leave them on, and that led to not just one, but, well, 2 flat batteries. So then it was a quick trip to hardware store Halfords to pick up an intelligent 2-channel charger. Now I will pop the link in the description, as it's a great piece of kit if you have one or more bikes. And also if you wish to trickle charge them. I also popped onto Amazon and ordered a couple of tail plugs, so you can plug this straight into your battery and not have to take the seat off. So there we go, all we need to do now is plug this in and it's ready to charge. Okay, so we've worked it out. Basically there's a little bit of plastic here on the side of the bike, so what we're going to do is just pop that in here just to protect it, but there is a piece of plastic here, and what I'm going to be able to do is just pop that and hide that behind it. Let's pop that back on so it doesn't come off again. Pop him in like that. We should be able to lose him behind here, and that should be safe enough. Now the cable's coming back here, of course. So again, on the Monkey, it's going to be more of the same. Trying to find somewhere to mount this ultimately. And I'm going to guess down onto the left-hand side here, behind one of the boxes, is probably going to be the best bit. I think I can get some routing through here. Don't really want to go around this side because we've got the exhaust in the way and things here. But pretty sure we can pull that back round. And as I say, there's a couple of plastic parts here that we can whiz that into without too many issues, I would say. Okay, so we've got some charge in the battery now, so I just wanted to show you a couple of things here in regards to kind of what you get. So I'm going to switch it on. This is about to switch back off. But if we go into the meter, all this is the new information. So you've got your voltage, you've got a rev counter here, engine temperature, throttle, and that is basically around how much throttle you're putting on. So if we start the bike, you'll then start seeing things like this, like the rev counter here. Just pick that up. Also give you the throttle information as well. It's a trip meter, a bunch of other stuff in there, so we'll work and see how that works out. That's the RPM, the engine temperature again. Battery voltage is now at 14 volts, which is good. Try not to make that mistake again. The other thing is when you switch the bike off and put it into park mode, this will then do a 10-second or 12-second countdown, and then it will actually switch itself off,
which is pretty good.
And that's really a great tip if you're going to be using the bike with the ignition on. Of course, it's not just the Chigee system that's going to be utilizing the power from that. It's also going to be your rear light and your front light as well, which obviously drain the battery. So lessons learned there, and well, now I've got myself a nice trickle charger, which was always the intention. So what about the negatives? Well, there is one glaringly obvious one, which is the app, and you use the app to basically download the video footage from the system, and really the app's a little bit clunky. So what you do is you go into the app, you open everything up, you have to hit a button on the screen, it then has to allow it to then download, and then you start doing the download, and you can only seemingly do one at a time, which is kind of a bit annoying. Now, what I found with this is that sometimes you have to keep knocking your phone just to keep it refreshed, and it does take a fair amount of time to just download a 2-minute video, and I'm talking maybe 6 or 7 minutes in some cases. Now, I have noticed a difference between the monkey bike and the system that's on that and this other bike, and I've changed SD cards out and various things like that to see if that was maybe a problem with speed potentially, but it doesn't seem that that's the case. The only other thing I guess would be the camera quality. It's not YouTube quality, it's 1080p, 30 frames per second. The newer system, of course, is 60 frames per second, and I would expect that, you know, ultimately you'd have a better visual from that system, but we'll come on to that in a minute. So going back to the SD card, and while you may assume that the MP4 files would be easily accessible from that SD card, well, by the time you've popped out the SD card and tried to pull it out of the awkward position and then plug it into your MacBook, well, the MacBook unfortunately doesn't recognize the file system as it's an exFAT mounted drive. The only saving grace here for me was, well, I was able to do it on a Windows PC and have full accessibility to the MP4 files with some ease. Now, I did spend quite a lot of time on the MacBook trying to get it to work, trying different file systems and initializing drives and all that kind of craziness, but for whatever reason it just won't work on this particular system. So you might end up locking yourself down a little bit if you've only got the app and you haven't got a Windows PC potentially. Now, I can't comment for the newer system, but I can only assume it's probably going to be very much of the same. So moving on to electronics and wiring, and please just make sure that you have half an idea on how to wire into battery terminals or splice into cables. There are positive and negative cables, one of each, and then there's a third yellow cable which also connects to the ignition on. This can usually be placed on a bladed fuse, and you can test this by turning the ignition on and then turning the ignition off again. When you remove your key, it will also have a countdown of around 12 seconds before the screen goes off. This means that you have removed power from the yellow positive to switch the system off. Now, across both bikes that I installed these onto, I would certainly say that the monkey bike didn't take that long, maybe all of about 20 minutes in total. I hid the cables inside the existing looms, paying special attention to the tidiness. I was able to mount both cameras on this bike at the front and the rear. They're also labelled up as F and R for your convenience. I did also add the yellow positive connection cable to the fuse line, and well, then I just powered it up. I added another 256GB card, and now on this install I didn't add the extra parts like tyre pressure monitors or the OBD module, but both systems do come with a GPS unit, and I found that mounting these just inside of the seats worked really well. And on reflection about the additional elements that, well, aren't really needed, so if you want to save a bit of money there and just use it as a CarPlay module, well, I would do just that and just have the cameras. Let's move on. So earlier on, I was talking about integrating 3D printing into and onto these motorbikes. Well, one of the best things about 3D printing is being able to make or adapt pretty much anything. Now, in this case, we're not playing around with anything that's structural, but 3D printing has been used on both bikes for a tail tidy on the Street Triple and elements around the headlight and headlight brackets on the Monkey. I'll be scanning the fenders and reprinting all of the chrome parts on the Monkey bike, and these files will of course be listed over on Printables. The links of course will be in the description down below. And I'm currently working on a tail tidy so we can integrate that rear camera onto the Street Triple. This is what I've got so far. We've hit some heat sinks straight into the top, and I'll be fitting this one to see how that looks next. Again, another reason to perhaps like and subscribe to the channel if 3D printing and motorbikes is your thing. But again, let's get back to the A005. So I did have another look over on their Kickstarter regarding the A006 Max. Now, if you are looking at the basic system right now, the new unit is coming in at $60 more than the 5. However, you'll also need to be aware that that does not include the cameras, which are another $179 on top. So maybe the 5 could be viewed as being better value overall, and I would expect that after the Kickstarter you might find that the price drops down a little more. So do make sure that you check out those links down in the description, and I will do my best to update when I see anything new on email. So overall, the AO05 Lite, I'm really happy with the way these things have turned out. Sure, there are a couple of little quirks there, but certainly from the integration on the Apple CarPlay, dead happy with that. Now, Chigee, I did buy these from Chigee directly. It took a few days for them to come through, and there were a couple of weird delays, and I had to email the company, and I think I mentioned that earlier on. Again, I did pay for these units. They're not free. They're not for review purposes or anything like that, but I am doing a quick review on it because this is going to aid some of the elements that I'm going to be doing later on with the motorcycle journeys and stuff that we end up doing in the future. So if this is something that does perhaps float your boat, if it's something that maybe you were looking into. So like I say, there are some key differences between the 5 and the 6, not just processing power and that extra inch. There's also things like integration into Insta360 cameras as well, which could be quite interesting. And maybe at some point I'll look to maybe upgrade one of these systems, but I'm fairly happy with the way things are now. Again, that app integration is a bit of a pain, and also the frame rate on the 1080p cameras, you know, it's okay, but it could be a lot better, and maybe that 60 frames per second on the 6 might be better overall, but the cost, of course, does go up. So it's a weighing scale there. Let me know what you guys think about this product in the comments down below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.
You are watching a master at work.